In this video, we will talk about how to create a standout resume. First, I want to mention that if you would like to get your resume reviewed by the resume reviewers in the Career Management Center, you can upload your resume to Handshake. This is also a place for you to just store your professional documents, also so that you can then apply for jobs on Handshake. But if you want it to go into the queue to automatically be set up for a resume review coach to get back with you with feedback, you will go to the upper right-hand corner of Handshake and click on it and go down to My Document. And then you will select from your computer and you will want to save that document as a PDF before uploading it to Handshake. Once it's uploaded, you should get some feedback in your notifications or your email, however you have that notification set up in Handshake. You will hear back from the resume reviewer within 2 business days. Now let's get into how to create an effective resume. One of the first things I want to mention is that you want to create your resume from scratch in Word. So try to stay away from any kind of designer resume templates that are very easy to find online. They're also very easy to create in different softwares online, but you really just need to go straight to Word with a fresh document and just go ahead and start creating that. One of the reasons for that is if you create the document in Word, then it's going to be a whole lot easier for you to update in the future. And also, you want your document to be able to be read correctly by applicant tracking systems. When you apply for jobs online and through company websites, it's very common for them to go through an applicant tracking system. And if you have a template, it's very, very likely that it is going to be rejected and your application never makes it to the employer, which is, you're putting in a lot of effort and time into this and you don't want that to happen, and it reduces your chances of getting an interview. Next, we're going to talk about just some of the basic formatting guidelines. So this is one of the things that makes a resume where someone actually wants to read it. It makes it very pleasing to the eye and also helps the employer and the recruiter to be able to find the information that they're looking for quickly. They typically will give your resume about 6 to 10 seconds when they are first reviewing it. So you want information in certain places that's very readable so that they can go straight to that information and get what they're needing quickly. First is that you just want to use black ink only in a resume. There's no reason to use any kind of colored ink on any area of the resume. To get started, you want to go ahead and just use a 1/2 inch to 1 inch margins on the left and the right. And you want those to be equal margins as well. That's something that you can play with later on if you feel like you need more space in your resume. If you're trying to add more information, you can decrease the margins a little bit, but you don't want to go past a 1/2 inch margin on each side. To start, 1 inch is going to really be good. The main body font should be around 10 to 12 point font, and that's something else that you can play around with once you're trying to get all of your information on the page. If you are feeling like you don't have enough room, then you can lower the font, but the main body font should never be below 10 because that's going to be very difficult to read. You want your section headers to be larger than the main body font. You want that to be a 14 to 18 point so that they do stand out. Again, those section headers standing out is what's going to help the recruiter to be able to find the information that they're looking for. And then you can even have your name at the top of the document a little larger if you want to and if you have room for it. So go ahead and just start with those 1 inch margins and a 12 point font. And as you're getting the information on the page, you can always adjust if needed. So now we're going to talk about what the header should look like. There's a lot of different ways you can do the header, and some of the time it's just going to matter how much space you have. If you are struggling to get all of your information on a one-page resume, which is what you should have until you've been in the workforce for 5 years or plus, then you may want to take up as little space as possible for your contact information. So you can see at the top, the name here is in a pretty large font, so you could lower that. But by taking away lines of space, you can spread them out across the page at the top, so that gives you some more space to work with. And on the other side of that coin is if you are trying to fill up your page on your resume, then maybe you want to use a larger header, and then stack the information on top of each other to take up a little bit more space. But that's something that you can always change as you are updating your document. You can always play around with the header to take away or add space. Now, the first section should always be the education section, unless, again, you've been in the workforce for 5 to 10 years. They're always going to want to know that education right away. So until you've been in the workforce for that long, go ahead and just make the education section be your the very first section that they see. You want it to stand out, and you want it to have accurate and correct information. You definitely want to list the full name of the university that you attended, and you do not list any other universities that you may have attended there, but if you did not complete any sort of degree, then that would not be listed on your resume. So as you can see here, we have Texas Tech University, Rawls College of Business, and then you have the degree name spelled out, Bachelor of Business Administration. Commonly we see bachelor's. That is not correct. It's Bachelor of Business Administration, and then whatever your major is. Then you will want to put your expected graduation date out to the side, and you would put the month and the year. You always want to spell out every month that you have listed in your document. You want to stay consistent, and you want to go ahead and spell that out and not abbreviate. There are things you can list under the education section with bullet points, such as GPA or any other concentrations or certificates. But you want to stay consistent in the format. So you can see as we go along with these resume samples, you'll see that the format is consistent all the way throughout the document. As far as the GPA goes, you do not want to list a GPA on your resume unless it is a 3.0 or above. So what I'm showing you here is another version of the education section where this person had minors. They wanted to list their major GPA, regular cumulative GPA, and also president's list and dean's list. So there's more information here, and they were able to just go ahead and add those as normal bullet points underneath the college information. So this does take up quite a bit of space. So if you have the space to do it and you need to put this information on there, then you can. But these are things that you may have to decide whether or not you want to include those depending on how much space you have. And our resume reviewers in our office can help you decide that. Next, we're going to go into work experience section. And one thing I've learned recently is that you definitely want the word experience in your section header. This is going to help the applicant tracking system read the information on your document as that it is your work experience. So be sure you can have work experience, or you can just you can do relevant experience, or you can just call it experience. But the main thing is to have that actual word in there. It's going to be formatted just like the education section. You're going to list your work experience in reverse chronological order, and you are going to shoot for having 3 to 5 bullet points for every work experience that you have listed. So again, this really depends on how much work experience do you need to list, do you have that you want to list. That may depend on how many bullet points you are allowed to have, depending on space, again, okay? When you are writing your bullet points, we'll get into this a little bit further down the line, but you definitely don't want to just list off tasks and duties. So look at the bullet points that you've listed and make sure that you're not being redundant, or that you're not really giving the employer any good information about skills that you've built. And that way, if you feel like you have too many bullet points, maybe you can narrow it down a little bit. But as you can see here, under work experience, you've got the place of business, okay, and then the location, and that's going to be in bold. And then underneath that, in italics, you've got the position name, and then the dates that you worked. Again, you want to spell out the dates, and you want to stay consistent with your dashes between the dates throughout the document, and then you list your bullet points. Stay away from any kind of sub bullet points or any other styles of bullet points. You only want to use just the typical black bullet point throughout your document. Okay, this is another version of work experience. So you can see this person is still employed at this same, so you would, at this same location, so you would put the date to present. And then they've got the two positions listed there in two different locations. So if you had two positions at the same location, then you would just go ahead and have the business name, and then you would list the two positions separately with separate bullet points and the dates that you worked in those roles. Again, staying in reverse chronological order. And then your third section is going to be anything from leadership experience to organizations you're involved in. You may want to list certifications, you may want to list achievements or professional associations. So that's what's typically, we save that for the bottom of the document. And another one that can go here if you do not have a lot of campus involvement or leadership experience would be relevant coursework. And obviously, once you get into the workforce, that's definitely going to go away, and you're going to need to replace that with experiences. But this is a great place for you to list organizations that you're involved in leadership roles you have, student organizations, or you could go into more like certifications and associations. I also want to mention that you will not list references anywhere on your resume. An employer will ask you for a list of references if they want them. So you don't even need to have anything such as references available on request or anything like that in the document. And then also we might as well go ahead and mention whether or not you want to have a summary section at the top. While you are in school, it is not necessary to have a summary section or an objective statement. That's something that once you are in the workforce and looking for your next job after your first role, then you probably would want a summary or objective statement. And so that's not anything you want to worry about right now. But let's say you are in grad school and you are headed into the workforce, and maybe you do already have some professional experience, and that would also be an exception to someone who would want a summary section. This is another example of that third section, and this one is a campus involvement section. Okay, so now we're going to go into your bullet points and how they should all begin with strong action verbs. One mistake we commonly see is that students will use the same action words or the same verbs over and over. Work is a very common one. So this list can help you. You can also Google synonyms when you're just trying to think of a word that you've already used it once. You're trying to think of a different one. That's another thing you can do is just Google synonyms. But you want to use different verbs throughout the document, and you want them to be strong action verbs describing the impact that you made in that role. And also when it comes to your bullet points, again, I mentioned earlier, you don't want to just list duties and tasks that you have in your role. You want to think about listing skills that you have built, whether they be what some people call soft skills or transferable skills. We also call them competencies. Such things such as teamwork, communication, leadership, problem solving. Those are important to show that you have exhibited in your bullet points. But stay away from short bullet points that don't really tell the employer or the reader the successes that you've had. And if you want to use this formula that we call the STAR method, that's also commonly used to answer interview questions, it will help you to formulate your bullet points in a way so that you're actually telling the reader about your successes and also the impact that you made in that role. Another thing you want to consider that you can see in this example here is trying to quantify your bullet points. Now, it's not necessary to quantify every single bullet point in your resume, nor will you be able to do that. But if you want to, have at least 3 to 5 numbers or quantifiable things in your bullet points that's going to draws the reader in. It also gives them a good idea, a measure of the kind of impact that you have made. So the thing that's going to help set you apart is having a resume that has clean and consistent formatting. And this is why we don't go into anything fancy with color or, any kind of fancy fonts. Any kind of, fancy bullets or anything like that, is because it really just needs to be basic and easy to read. And this is the feedback that we have gotten from employers, that this is the type of resume that they're looking for. Make sure that your resume is free from any kind of typos or spelling errors, grammatical mistakes. You can run this through on Word and other softwares that will pick out any of these. And you've got to make sure that your document is free before you save it as a PDF and upload it to for an application. This could make the difference in you actually getting an interview or not if you have grammatical mistakes or spelling errors. As far as do you want your resume to be specific? The answer is ideally yes. It's okay to have several working documents. It's okay to have just a general resume that you could, for instance, going to a career fair situation where you're going to be talking to lots of different companies. That would be an instance where you would have just a more general resume. But if you are applying for a specific role that you are very interested in, then it's very smart to take the job description for that role and try to pick out skills and keywords from the job description that you can include in the bullet points of your resume. Not only is that going to help the ATS pick up your qualifications and skills off of your resume for the application, but it's also going to help them to see that you have what they're looking for that specific role. So yes, it does take time to have multiple versions of your resume, but it does increase your chances of getting hired once you do start the actual application process. Again, I want to mention that we can review your document for you here in the Career Management Center if you are a Rawls College of Business student. You can make appointments for one-on-one resume review help in Handshake, or you can go ahead and just upload your document like I mentioned earlier, and we will have our resume review coaches go over that document and send you feedback.